Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and taking the time to be here with us. My name is Chiara Bonsignori. I'm one of the chairs of the Women in Architecture Committee, and I want to thank you all for being here and the great speakers that also are giving some of their time to give us some insights. So thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Lily. And well, on behalf of Women in Architecture, welcome. And I want to let you know that we've been working hard to try and support the design community, and it's been hard on everybody, and we've all, this COVID has hit us all in different ways, and so we always try and support the community of women designers, and so we really hope that this is going to be a valuable conversation. And we prepared a presentation, but I really invite you guys to try and make the most of this and ask questions and really take advantage of this community that we have, and of this event in particular. If you have anything that you want to discuss or ask to the speakers or everyone else. So I really encourage you. We would like to make this, a conversation. So I think these topics are always valuable, honestly, even if you are currently employed. I think those are very good skills to brush off from time to time. So again, I hope you can get some good value out of this, and we're really excited to have you all here today. So with that, I leave it to Lani, who's the other, was the past chair of the Women in Architecture, was also helped putting this together, for some quick introduction. So
sure. Before I introduce our great two guests, I wanted to kind of quickly go over what we call kind of the rules for this virtual event. It is recorded, and if you have any questions, you can always just write it into the chat box and we'll go through them. We'll try to do it topic by topic, but whatever, just put down whatever you guys want to share, or if you guys want to share thoughts with each other, please feel free to use it as a venue just to ask questions or share anything. And also, I think there is a virtual hand. This is something new I discovered, and not this, but like, I guess under the chat, you can do a virtual hand, and we'll also use that if you wanted to say something or ask a question. So with that,
Wait, Lonnie, can I intercede for 1 second? Do you mind?
Sure.
The virtual hand, if you pop the participants at the bottom of the screen in the menu, just click on participants, and you'll see at the bottom of that menu, once you open up the participants menu, there's a capability to raise your hand. We also want to welcome everyone, invite everyone. I know a lot of people are joining us by phone today only, looks like some people, to switch over to video if you can. And also to make sure to try and put your full name if you can give that to us. Thank you. Back to you guys. Thank you. Sorry about that.
So with that, I'd like to introduce our two guest speakers. We have Lily Bergman with Bespoke Careers and Jenna Knudsen from Co-Architects. She's a principal at Co-Architects, and they'll both speak from the recruiting side, but also from the architecture firm side, and kind of share their knowledge and recommendations. So with that, I think I'll hand it off to you, Lily.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Bergman. I'm an architecture recruiter with Bespoke Careers. We're a architecture-focused recruitment agency that has had an office in Los Angeles for the past 3.5, almost 4 years. And previous to that, I studied landscape architecture at USC, and I worked in landscape architecture for about 5 years before becoming a recruiter. So I'm pretty embedded in this community. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of you know, the market, but also the design side. And yeah, I'm happy to join you guys.
Hi, I'm Jenna Knudsen. I'm a principal with Co-Architects, which is about a 125-person firm here in Los Angeles, and we also have a small office in San Diego. My role there is leading projects, but I also lead the hiring and staffing for the firm. So that's probably why I'm here. And also I'm the past chair of the Women in Architecture. So I'm happy to be here and see all my friends' faces here. So thanks for having me.
Great, thanks. I guess with that, Lily, would you like to, I guess we wanted to do the poll questions. So
yeah,
we
let's do
wanted
that
to
first.
run a few questions just to have a better sense of the audience. And so I'll send a few questions if you guys can respond real quick. It should take a few minutes just so. Yeah, we have a few, it will be a total of 6 questions, 6.
So the first question, how many years of experience do you have?
Okay, it looks like we have a good amount of number with 10 plus years of experience. So, okay, we have a consensus. So I'm gonna share the results so you guys can all see it. We have 33% with 20 plus years of experience, and then 35 between 10 and 20. And then there's another roughly 30% of 0 to 7. So. Okay. So, okay, the second question is about expertise. We would like to know if, what's your main sector of expertise? Education, commercial, housing, hospitality.
And this is just to help us kind of understand who our audience is today, because, you know, obviously if you're coming from architecture with, you know, 0 years of experience, some of this is gonna be different for you than if you're coming at it with 15 years of experience or whatever sector you're in. So this is actually really helping us with our moving forward.
All right. Sounds like, all right. We have a majority of other, which I'm not sure. It's a mystery. But also a lot of housing and residential, followed by commercial. Okay, and then this other question is about, I guess, what software you mostly work with. And Revit is a big winner already. Give it a few seconds. So we're seeing 50% mostly working in Revit, 25% CAD, 10% Rhino, and then there's a 10% other, which I'll be curious to explore a little bit. And then moving to question number 4, asking if you're currently looking for a position, and if yes or no, and what's your position right now? Should play some music while I do this. All right, almost got 23, 70%. All right, I guess this is good. So we'll see 33% is responding that yes, you're looking for a position, and will seriously consider any offer, even if it's a different sector or if it's a lateral move. And then equally 25%, no, I want to take time to learn something new, or yes, I will accept only offers that are a step up and in my sector. And then, all right, moving on. We'd like to know a little more of the reasons why you're looking. If it's a layoff due to COVID, if it's just that time in your career where you're looking to trying to make a move, or if you're just here to brush off your skills and you're not really looking for a new position, but all right. I would say this is spread out pretty evenly. We have 27% layoff due to COVID, and followed by I'm currently employed but want to see what's out there. No, actually, I'm not looking for a new position. And then furlough, and then other. All right. And last question, promise. Just learning a little about skills, and I guess what's your approach typically when you're applying for a position? What level of skills do you respond to? Right. So we have a half, 50%. I look for jobs that I'm 80% qualified for and have room to grow. Followed by 30% roughly, mostly positions I'm 100% qualified for, but sometimes I like to apply for a job I'm less qualified for. And then followed by 12%, only positions I'm 100% qualified for. And then there's an 8% that also says positions I'm barely qualified for, but the opportunity is great, so I want to give it a chance. All right. No prizes, sorry. All right. Thank you guys for your feedback. I guess Lily, we're ready for the presentation. If you want to share,
yeah,
we'll dig in.
Okay, awesome. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. All right, so thank you for joining today. I wanted to just, so this is what Jenna and I look like. You'd like to know. And again, it is important, I think, for you, if you can put your video on, for you to do that so that we all feel like we're in an actual, social architecture event and not just talking to black screens. So do want to recommend that you do that. So first, I just want to talk about kind of where the market is at right now and current hiring trends that we're seeing. So, the architecture industry did get hit with when coronavirus shut down the economy. And I think the best metric to show that is that 8 out of 10 firms did apply for PPP loans. There is new data actually that just came out today from a market researcher, PSMJ, that showed that construction activity actually is starting to rebound in May. So April was a particularly hard month. And this weird graphic here that you can see with the stars and the green dots and the red dots, what that's showing is in April, which is the green dot, the green circle, that shows the steep decline in construction activity from the previous month. So you can compare that to May, which is the blue star. You can see that while there was still a decline in May, there was less of a decline. So I know it seems like kind of a bittersweet victory, but there is progress happening, and the contraction is reducing right now. So that information just came out today. Obviously, I think a lot of people have kind of figured this out, but commercial and industrial has been the hardest hit, and housing seems to be doing the best. Obviously, that's connected to housing being considered an essential service and commercial just being hit really, really hard with being shut down entirely. And AIA's billing index, which is a monthly survey, is actually due for their May numbers tomorrow. So, if you want to keep up to date with this, where the market is going, and which I really recommend that you do, you can look at AIA as a resource, and also ArcConnect has pretty good articles about that. And I think, Jenna, you were going to chat a little bit about how this has affected CO in particular.
Yeah, well, our markets are higher education, healthcare, K through 12, and some workplace. So while I think many markets other than those, which would kind of fall into the institutional category, stopped work, the majority of our work did not stop. So the work that we had under contract in March has stayed consistent and according to schedule. I think we have seen some RFPs for projects that we were anticipating that have now gone on hold or are pushing out. But in the last, whatever it's been, 12 weeks that we've been working at home, we have seen some RFPs. We have continued to pursue and win work. So it's not stagnant. It's not quite the craziness that it was, March 1st. But there's definitely work. And so I think we continue to be busy in those sectors.
All right, awesome. So where are we going? I think, just like Jenna said, market forecasters right now are cautiously optimistic. from that data that came out yesterday or the last few days, we are seeing a rebound in housing and commercial projects. And also because of record low interest rates and a pent up demand, a lot of more market forecasters are seeing, or they're predicting that there's going to be a rebound in housing and commercial projects once the health crisis passes. Also, there's the possibility of an infrastructure bill in Q4 that could also help push employment up. But at this point, there's really no precedence for a situation like this. So firms are really evaluating on a week-by-week basis during their staffing meetings if they're going to bring people on. So once again, I recommend staying up to date with resources like AIA and ArtConnect to stay informed. So what recruiters, and I'm a recruiter, so I can speak to what recruiters are seeing right now, and Jenna will speak to what employers I think are seeing right now. But since in March, a lot of firms just froze hiring entirely. Some didn't even continue with interviewing or looking at resumes, and some did. That was all very particular to the firm. But if they were hiring, it was for very specific roles, such as BIM managers or IT managers, executive assistants, landscape designers, with very specific skills like Revit. They were hiring for roles that they needed for jobs that they knew they were going to keep. But in the last about a week or the last 10 days at Bespoke, where I work, we've been seeing firms slowly but surely restart hiring for more design and production roles. And we're also seeing more employers interested in hiring designers and production people for contract work, which we'll talk about more later. But this is basically an hourly option so that firms can still still meet their production needs without hiring any staff full time during a time of kind of insecurity. Jenna, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty consistent with what you're saying. I mean, we were very actively interviewing and hiring early this year. So we actually had quite a few candidates who we had already interviewed, and we did need to pause and slow down, not stop. A lot of that was just trying to understand what was happening. And that the attention was on, making sure that we were doing our work effectively from home and, kind of getting used to the new situation. We did hire and onboard 4 permanent staff in the last 12 weeks. We had several summer interns that we had made offers to prior to going remote, and we honored those offers. So we have some summer interns. And like Lily said, and I can talk about it later, we have engaged temporary staff to also address what we see as some more temporary peaks in hiring needs. So wanting to be really kind of prudent, and also it's just not as easy to onboard people when everyone is remote. And so we've had to go slower than I think we would typically see if we were all in an office space together. And right now we're, and probably everybody is doing this, is just kind of continually evaluating what's our current workload, what's our future workload, and are we in a position to add any more people at this time? And that's a constant evaluation.
Great. So I think next, this presentation is by no means over, but after kind of the market summary and just telling you guys about where we're seeing the market right now, we did want to just give you guys the opportunity to pose any questions, or if you had any comments or anything like that. We're probably going to allow, I think, 5 minutes or so to this. So yeah, if you do have questions, you could pose them to Chiara or Lani, and they will let us know.
I mean, if not, we can always kind of save them for later too.
Sure.
We are at the halfway mark.
Right.
All right, let's move on. No
All right.
questions.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so first I just want to talk about, I mean, really the basics of getting a job, which is, presenting yourself. And I think everyone needs a refresher with this. You don't apply to jobs every day. It's not your job to apply to jobs every day. So you're focused on production or design, project management. So having to shift gears and think about how you're going to present yourself to someone else, I think requires some dedicated thought and kind of deliberate moves. So we're going to go over that right now. So the average time that a person or a recruiter looks at your resume is 7.4 seconds. And being a recruiter and working with HR people, I can verify that this is true. So it might seem like a ridiculously short amount of time that someone is gonna look at your resume. I think this number really reflects kind of that first glance of whether or not they're gonna continue considering you as a candidate. And if they do, they will take a longer look at your resume. But this is really your first, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And while that's cliche, your resume should really be designed in order to kind of get over that first hurdle and pass that first test. So, when we talk about your resume and designing your resume, this is actually really important, because if your resume is confusing or not well laid out or doesn't really describe your experience and skills, you could potentially lose an opportunity just because of that. And I don't want that to happen. So I also think there's a lot of misconceptions about the rules of resumes. And I just want to start by saying that this is all, what I'm giving you today is all subjective feedback. There are no rules. This is based on what I've noticed working at Bespoke is most successful with our clients. So you are free to take this information or totally disregard it and go your own way. But this is really what we've noticed is successful. All right, so your resume really should be clear and concise and quickly communicate your strengths, experience, and background. We're designers, so don't be afraid of white space. Use that to your advantage when designing. It's really important to keep your resume short and clean. A single page should be enough. I've seen design directors with over 20 years of experience manage to get their entire resume onto one page. So if they can do that, so can you. And a simple layout and clean hierarchy makes it easier for people to read. And keep in mind, people are scanning your resume in 7.4 seconds. So the more simple and clear you can make it using a hierarchy of fonts and sections, that will really help you. One tip is actually to print out your resume, and once you're done with it, print it out and look at it as a physical object. I know, as designers, sometimes you get really stuck into the computer and you're designing things and the model stays in the computer and there's never ever any physical creation that gets made except for the entire building, but there's no physical model. I would consider really printing it out and looking at it, because this is going to allow you to quickly make changes. If you want to change the layout, you just use a red pencil and do that. Also, it's going to allow you to read over it and check your spelling. And for some reason, my brain, when I look at something on a screen, I don't see any spelling errors, and when I print it, I see it automatically. So spelling is non-negotiable. You should not have any spelling errors in your resume. So first thing, like first content that I think your resume should really show is make your strengths obvious. If you are excellent in Revit or Rhino, put that at the top. If you are focused on research and business development, put that at the top. If you focus on education projects or commercial projects, if you have in-depth experience with private residential, put that at the top. This is not an opportunity for you to list every single project type that you've worked on. Just focus on the things that you're confident that you could step into a role in that sector or step into that software and be able to confidently execute. I think a lot of people make a mistake that they just put every single sector that they've had experience with. This is really not, you know, once you start listing things like a laundry list, I think people kind of zone it out. So really focus on what your real strengths are. And it does take like some honesty to be clear about what you're good at and what you love doing. Show the correct order of your professional experience. So it's the way to order your employment is chronological order with the most recent work experience being first and then going down from there. I recommend using not just years that you were at a place, but the months. You don't need to get super specific with the exact date, at least not at this point. But you know, it can be a difference of an entire year if you just put the years. 2018 to 2019 could mean January 2018 to December 2019, or it could mean basically the opposite. So employers want to know that information. And include any, you know, especially for people who are earlier in their career right now, include non-architectural job experiences. If what you learned in those experiences have given you skills that you can pull into architecture. So if that's teamwork or the ability to collaborate, it's pretty much the same thing. But still, you know, you can flesh out the job description to describe more about what you learned at that job, what your responsibilities were, and any key skills that you have brought from it. Also, it's really important to show your technical experience in your resume. Clearly spell out to the person looking at your resume what software you are good or excellent in. Again, be honest. If you're average in Revit, say that. You know, I think there's a lot of kind of visual ratings that people have been doing on their software, almost like a dial or something, or giving themselves a rating. I would stick to using words. This is just my preference. Stick to using words to describe your skills because those dials kind of don't mean anything. Like it's hard to pinpoint if you consider yourself good or excellent sometimes if you're just kind of using a graphic for that. And again, check your font and grammar. Like I said before, print it out and read it on paper. That really helps me. And I think, I mean, it's only one sheet, so you can do it. And do what you need to do just to make sure you're not misspelling anything. Yeah, Jenna, do you have anything you want to add to this? Kind of just like steamroll.
Yeah, I mean, another just individual opinion, I agree with most of what you've put here. And, you know, as somebody who sees a lot of resumes, I think just make it easy for the person reviewing your resume. If, you know, if I'm only going to get one or two things from it, think about what are the two or three things that you would want me to know in your resume, and make sure that those pop out graphically. I think otherwise, I think Lily's got a good list there.
So I wanted to interrupt. I know I see Luciana has a question. Luciana, do you want to speak?
Actually, I can leave more towards the end because it was a question more related to the initial presentation in terms of how the COVID is impacting the sectors, and you guys mentioned about commercial being impacted. But I wonder also, I don't know, maybe the conversation will get there or it won't, but if some of those not allowing us to drop the ball now would be how can we be also resilient in the sense of looking at sectors that might be, like you mentioned, it was hit harder, but maybe what are the ways that we can embrace temporary aspects of design in order to change those situations, right? So it's almost like we also have not to be stiff right now in the way that we act as designers or any field that we are working on right now, and how I think some level of adaptability or flexibility will have to happen from our end in order also to adapt to this new normal that every sector is being affected right now, right? So we are seeing informal guidelines that the US and Europe is doing right now for restaurants, hospitals, schools, and office spaces, right? So we know that I think it's more about how we can adapt in order to embrace that. So what exact commercial spaces would be? And I'm saying that because I'm back in São Paulo. I was in LA. I'm back in São Paulo now, and I'm working with commercial spaces here that are really putting their the edge as the question of how to create, right, the separation between the street and the space of their service that cannot be now have people coming inside. So in that sense, we are seeing ways of adapting to this new reality, right? If that's going to be temporary or not, I don't know. So I just wonder if those areas that are being hit harder, how it's also a matter of us, our side, being more flexible to embrace that change. So maybe it's not just like looking to the extremes, right? And also seeing what is the middle ground for what we are facing right now. But anyway, it's more like a comment. So it was more general, it's broader than I think the discussion that is happening right now in the presentation. But that's why I said I could put that later.
I mean, Luciana, I think what you're saying is what, sorry, my dog. What are the are there opportunities in this, right? Design opportunities, and I know a lot of people are looking at that, a lot of firms, but as individuals, kind of looking for opportunities, especially if you are in between jobs, whether you take the initiative to do that, right, and kind of create a little research project or an actual project to address, how do we need to adapt? I think that's a really great idea and something that could be a differentiator in a portfolio. So I think we're not really, I don't think, touching on that so much specifically, but generally we are kind of touching on it at the end of this. What are things that people can be doing right now to address, skills in between jobs.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Thank
Great.
you.
Okay. Well, so just continuing with the kind of basics here of CV and portfolio. So with portfolios, sorry, I lost my spot here. With portfolios, a lot of employers still want to see a PDF portfolio. They prefer this. This is as what we see at Bespoke. They prefer this to a URL, a website, or an issue link, because you can, as a designer, you can take that URL down whenever, and companies need to have a record of who has applied and what their application was in order to get that job. So while issue is kind of, it's convenient, PDF portfolios are still the industry standard. And with portfolios, really there are some, I'd say, rules that you definitely want to follow. Don't make it greater than 10 megabytes. Keep it, between 10 to 15 pages. This is an opportunity for you to kind of give a sampling of the best of, or your projects that you're most proud of. It doesn't necessarily mean every project that you've ever worked on in your entire life. That is something that you can bring to an interview later. It's a larger body of work if they decide to continue with an interview, but this is more of a sampling of kind of your greatest strengths and experience as a designer. So really show your style in your portfolio. The layout can show your design skills and capabilities, make it your own. But also beyond just and really show a balance of 3D model, image grabs, photos of the finished product, drawings, details. That's important. It's not just about the finished product. The designers looking at your portfolios, they want to see the process, but it's also more than just about the images. What I really like about this portfolio is that it, first of all, it has a name for the project, which is great because then I can reference it with that person and they'll know what I'm talking about, and I can reference that project with other people and they'll know what I'm talking about because they just go to the portfolio and look at it. It also has a short description of what that person did in this project, when they worked on it, explains their role in the project, their process in the design, project data, who the client was, who the architect was. This is a British company. This is actually a real portfolio from our London office, a candidate who applied there who said we could use their portfolio for example. So that's why there's, weird companies that you've never heard of. And when the project was completed, who was on the team. This provides a lot of information for employers because architecture is a small world. So if they see on your team that you work with co-architects or HED, or that you worked with a contractor that they've worked with, they might know people who were on your team, and this is an automatic referral. So if they're interested in you, they might actually just call these people and see what it was like before you're even beginning any reach out to you. So this is actually really important information to include in your portfolio. Also include if your project won any awards or if it made a huge difference in the community. Not every impactful project has won awards, so I think it's key to put in here, what that project brought to the community, how many beds, or if it was stopped in construction. Also add that information because designers understand that sometimes projects get stopped in construction. It's not really your fault, and it's work that you did. And last but not least, keep your portfolio updated. So your work evolves over time, and the portfolio doesn't need to be perfect, but it should always be updated. So at least have your professional work in the last 5 years is really what needs to be reflected. And Jenna, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't know, Kiara, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you, I guess, really, what are the most common mistakes? What are the deal breakers when you see something and you're like, no, this really doesn't work? Or what is something you're like, wish you would be able to tell the person that, sends something and you're like, I wish you, I don't know. I guess I want your input on the most common mistakes. And also, I guess, what's the real expectation if you're hiring somebody, say, 15 years experience, or if you're hiring somebody out of school?
Actually, can I tack on to that, Kiara? A question for Lily and Jenna. It's kind of a question that came up on the chat. For someone that is, has been working longer, like 20 plus years, and if they're more in like project management, maybe that's not necessarily in your portfolio. What other ways can you kind of show your other skills that you would have? Leading teams, any soft skills, anything else like that. How do you how do you recommend architects and designers put that in their portfolio and resume?
Sure. Okay. So let's first talk about the resume for somebody who's a project manager. So typically, I can't speak for Jenna, but when I get resumes for project managers, I don't assume that I'm going to get a portfolio, but I'd love one. I would love to have one because even though you're not super involved, like you're not a designer and you're not a project architect, it's good to have a visual cue for the kinds of projects that you've worked on. So keep in mind, people who are reviewing your portfolio and on the hiring team are architects, and they're visually oriented, and they want to be able to connect with the work that you've done. So if you can even put together a 3-page sample of projects that you worked on with just finished project imagery, that is going to really help your resume. But putting in, skills about like team leading, managing others, that stuff that I would put in your resume at the top, about, what are really clarifying your skills. And if you have an ethos about how you lead teams, put that, in the summary at the top of your resume. A lot of the times also I see with project managers is that they'll have a supplemental addition to their CV, which is a project list. And I really recommend separating your project list from your resume, because if you include your project list in the resume, it's going to be so long. A lot of the times if you have over 15, 20 years of experience, and it's going to turn your resume into a 3-page like novel, and people are going to get overwhelmed. So keep the resume separate and then take out all the project list, and you can include that, but just have it be a separate PDF. And it'll just, in people's brains, they'll just be able to honestly look at it and understand it so much easier. It sounds like it's kind of a dumb difference, like it's not a real difference, but the brain is going to view it differently. So, and then the other question about what mistakes I see commonly. Well, first let's talk about resume real quick. Few mistakes. One is overestimating your years of experience. So years of experience is calculated as the time that you have worked after you graduated, or in between your undergraduate and your graduate. Unfortunately, it does not include internships. I know no one likes to hear that, but since no one is using that as a metric, we're all even. So we're all taking a few years back in years of experience. If you have only 1 or 2 years of experience, or 3 or 4, that's totally fine. You don't need to inflate it. Just be super clear about where you're at. Other mistakes, if you have a LinkedIn profile and the time that you worked at firms as reflected in your resume doesn't align with your LinkedIn profile, that is going to raise alarm bells for people who are reviewing your resume, because they will check on your LinkedIn profile and it will be confusing. So you don't want, you want to make sure everything is copacetic and consistent. And I think generally, I just think it's tough to edit this down, but the most common mistake is that they're just too long and wordy. Like, this actually has full sentences. I would be fine with just bullet points, really, because like I said, people spend 7.4 seconds looking at this, so they're scanning. They'll read this if they are interested. But yeah, those are the biggest mistakes. Jenna, what do you think?
Well, I'm doing a time check because we don't have very much, but I would just say really briefly that the best candidates tell a story that is consistent, and it's across the resume, the cover letter, and the portfolio, right? And hopefully it's tying to the skills that you say are strong and the job that you're looking for. So if you are for a design role, right, then you better have a very, sort of good aesthetic, a point of view on how you've laid out your portfolio and how you're telling your story. And same with your resume, and then your cover letter should back that up. If you are in more of a management position, you know, what are the skills? Like you need to be really organized. You need to be like clear and concise. Then the materials that you put forth should show that. And I agree with Lily. We're all we still like to see buildings, even if your role was managing it. That's an important role. You know, you have a big responsibility. And the work samples that you might show is like, what is something really creative that you did? Maybe you have a really great BIM execution plan, or a really great, you know, way that you've organized a team, you know, a large team of people, or, you know, maybe you have a really great budgeting tool. I mean, those are the kinds of things that shouldn't be overlooked. And but it's depending on the role that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And for portfolio, biggest mistakes, I mean, the biggest mistake is sending me, like somebody sending me an issue link and having to like wade through a ton of advertisements and not getting a PDF. But also just too much clutter. You know, I like this portfolio, I think might be this page that I'm showing might even be a little bit misleading, because this is probably like an 11 by 17. I'm assuming this page is actually 11 by 17, not 8.5 by 11. So really making sure you have white space, or that you're giving your images some time to have a statement and not just cramming a ton of images in there. Or just having the entire portfolio be images without any kind of explanation of your role in that project, the kind of work that you did, you know, any background. Please don't assume that people know every architecture project that's been built in Los Angeles or other places. You know, assume that they've never seen this project. They have no idea who the client is.
Lydia, we have to move a little faster. So we can leave a bit more time for discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just go through this pretty quickly. Cover email is important as well. I think this gets kind of forgotten a lot, but you know, state in your email when you email your resume or portfolio and why you're applying. What about the projects interest you? And don't just send the same cover letter to every place and change the name, because people will sniff that out and immediately just disregard it. Spell out your work experience in your cover letter. You know, I have 3 years of experience. Explain your value to them. You know, have you worked on similar projects? Do you have software skills that you know that they need? Do you help getting new projects? Clarify your availability. And then actually we have another break for questions, but maybe we should just run through the next portion. What do you think?
Yeah, I would move forward, and then I guess leave it at the end for the questions. Okay. Yeah.
So the last part that I want to talk about is finding jobs. And I think a lot of people assume that this is a really easy portion, like finding advertisements for jobs, but this is quite difficult. So, you know, if right now, one thing I just want to really impress upon you guys is that if you recently lost your job, or you don't have work right now, and you're kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to get better, don't let too much time pass. Take action now. Finding a job is not a one-step process, and it can take a while. And, you know, employers are understanding of COVID-19, but just try not to let too much time pass before you delve into your job search. And I did want to say, apply to jobs that you're only 80% qualified for. I see a lot of the time that women tend to try to hit every part of a job description, and if they don't, they're uncomfortable applying to it. It's okay to apply to a role that you're not totally fully qualified for, as long as you are direct. If you get to the interview stage, where your strengths and weaknesses are. All right, so websites, there's the, you know, familiar faces of where to find jobs, AIA, job listings board, ArtConnect, LinkedIn, Indeed, Craigslist. If you have the opportunity to email a resume in directly, like let's say in ArtConnect, it actually gives you an email address to send your resume in, I would do that instead of just applying through these sites. That gives you the chance to have a conversation with somebody back and forth. If you know somebody that works at the company that you're applying to, include this in your note. It's kind of a built-in reference for that HR person to check out. Something that maybe a lot of people I think don't know is that it costs money to post ArtConnect and LinkedIn. Quite a lot of money, actually. So not all firms are posting when they have an ad up onto these websites. Sometimes they'll just post one job that is particularly hard for them to find onto these job listings. But if you go to their website, you're going to find a lot more job opportunities that might be more relevant to your skills and experience. So look up the firms that you're interested in, that you see are advertising, or even if they're not advertising, go to their page, find a place to send your resume to, and send it. You can also find, if you're kind of looking for firms that are similar to the one that you're applying to, if you go to LinkedIn and you go to that firm's page, LinkedIn will actually give you similar companies for you to check out. So that's kind of a good trick. And then recruiters, like myself, have job ads up on their websites that you can apply to as well. So you can look up different recruiters in the area that you want, that you're applying for, and apply to them, and hopefully they can help hook you up with a job. Your social network is also really important to reach out to. You know, your past colleagues, employers, teachers, and other people that you worked with, consultants. Reach out to them. You know, a short email, a text, or a phone call is fine. You be the judge of what's appropriate. Let them know that you're looking for a job. Ask if their firm is hiring. You know, you can be direct. Tell them you're looking. Ask them if they're hiring. Do they know anybody who is? Would it be okay if you send them your resume and portfolio? Could they pass it along to anybody that they know? Could they put a good word in for you? This is not weird or, you know, in any way corrupt. This is how job searches go a lot of the time. And also update your LinkedIn account and mark yourself open to opportunities if you want to. That means that recruiters, both internally at larger firms, they have internal recruiters, and external recruiters like myself can find you on LinkedIn. And be flexible. So we're seeing that a lot more, given the current climate, a lot more employers are looking at hiring people on contract. So being flexible with considering contract work is going to give you an advantage. A contract means that you're paid hourly. It's basically like a temp job, or, you know, some other firms structure it in different ways. And I think, Jenna, you wanted to add something here.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just really reiterate to use your network. And if I get a resume through an employee or through a former employee or through somebody that, you know, that I know, then you automatically, you know, are coming with some credibility as opposed to, you know, more of a cold call. So there's nothing wrong with applying, you know, online, but definitely use your networks. It will help get maybe a little more time, you know, spent on your resume.
Yeah, for sure. References are very strong. People are, it's if you are referred, it's going to be a lot easier, I think. Did you want to talk about contractors, Jenna, or?
Yeah, I mean, just that is something that we're doing right now. So, you know, I mean, I think that could be something that you could include in a cover letter, you know, if you would entertain, you know, temporary engagement. I think that being flexible on, you know, kind of what it is. I mean, we have done that, you know, quite a bit over the years, and there have been many instances where we have hired people who started as contract employees as full-time employees. So it's a good way to test, for everybody to test it out, right, if it works.
Yeah, yeah. Contract roles are kind of like an extended job interview. It's a good way for you to see what it's like working there and see if it's a good fit for you and for the employer as well. So it's really not, I would view it as a real kind of arsenal in your toolbox if you're able to do that. And then for the interview itself, I mean, when I say turn up on time, we're obviously talking about Zoom interviews at this point. When you are on a Zoom call, there's literally no excuse to be late. So be early if you can. Try to look at the camera like I'm doing right now. It's super awkward. It's at the top of my laptop and it's about this big. But you know, people will notice that when you're not at yourself and on the screen. I think that's everyone's kind of, you know, instinct, because it's so weird. Address everyone by name, so it's clear who you're talking to, but also that you're acknowledging everyone in the room and just being respectful. And also speak clearly. So video conferencing can affect speech. Speak slowly and clearly, and wait until the interviewer has finished speaking before you begin to answer, because when two people speak at the same time on these video conferencing softwares, it basically, neither of you can hear each other. So it is a little bit more awkward and slower, but this is kind of a good technique to keep the interview smooth. And then I think Jenna, I also had a note here to, that you're.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple points in terms of the interview. I would say, you know, make sure that you treat everybody that you interface with in the process with respect, and that includes, you know, whoever is reaching out to you to set up the interview. It gets back to us if you do not. Do your homework. And this goes for, you know, I think the cover letter as well. So, you know, you should be, again, this goes back to the story, you should be tying your, you know, you kind of what you're passionate about with this job and this firm. So, you know, I want to know, you need to sort of fill in the blanks, and the interview is the opportunity to, you know, to continue to tell your story, to fill in the blanks. If you're trying to pivot from, you know, 10 years of doing, you know, residential to, you know, to doing healthcare, then you need to think about how you're going to make that pivot and how you're going to sell it to somebody like me, right? So maybe, you know, you're really great at custom detailing. You know, you have a kind of, you've done everything because you work in a small office. I mean, you need to kind of think about what are the strengths that you have and how can you apply that to the job that you are now trying to get. You should understand the firm. If you know anybody who works there, you know, try to find out, is it going to be really formal or is it going to be informal? You know, kind of feel out. It's hard to feel the room when you're not in a room, but, you know, do your best to kind of, you know, I think take cues from how the interviewers are acting in terms of a kind of formalness or informalness. I think that's probably going to make everything sort of go more comfortably. If you can find out who is doing the interview, this will often change, but it's great. People like to hear about themselves, you know, so if you walk into an interview and, you know, you tell somebody, you know, I love this project that you worked on, you know, because you spent 10 minutes looking on the website and you know what they worked on, that automatically shows that you put a little bit of effort into it. And then again, being able to tie, you know, the kind of work that the firm does, the projects and the role to what you're passionate about. I think it's really important that you know your weaknesses and gaps in your resume. And what some of those might be is maybe you've moved around a lot. You know, you have a lot of jobs. So you should be prepared to talk about why that is. I think Lily mentioned it's a small world. You know, you could put if you put a, you know, maybe you were in an office for a very short time or it just wasn't a good experience. Just say that. That's okay. You know, every office is not a good fit for everybody. And if you feel like you have something like that, it's better for you to tell your story than have somebody else, you know, tell your story. You don't need to make a big deal out of it, but just, you know, explaining, yeah, that was not a good fit for me at that time. If you're missing experiences, you can turn that into, you know, an opportunity for, you know, why you're interested. You know, so maybe if you've done a lot of, you know, design competitions or, you know, the kind of SD and DD phases, but you don't really have the technical and construction administration, then that's an opportunity to talk about why that's important, why that's, you know, why maybe you're looking at this specific firm or this specific role, because it's going to fill out, you know, your kind of growth opportunities. So, and I think just the last thing I would do is, like, it again goes to telling a story. So don't describe images in your portfolio. You know, talk about the work, talk about your process, talk about, you know, what you loved about it, what was a challenge, you know, how you solved something. Most people can look at images and floor plans and know, you know, here's a bedroom and here's another bedroom and then here's a bathroom. You know, don't describe. Connect it to yourself and your work. It's much more interesting, and it also, you know, will help in terms of, you know, kind of broadening the discussion and taking it, you know, in a kind of direction where I think, you know, it'll be more interesting and probably more engaging.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all really good points.
Oh, and ask questions, have questions. I mean, just have one question, two questions. It can be about, you know, team structure, culture, current projects. And even if they answered the question, when somebody asks if you have questions, you can say, you know, well, I had these few questions, but you answered them. It just shows that you're interested and that you showed up prepared.
Yeah. I like to say to candidates that an interview is just as much an opportunity for you to interview them as for them to interview you. So definitely come prepared with questions. I mean, you know, don't grill them, but it is an opportunity for you to learn more about their office and that work culture and how they work and the projects that they're working on. And that kind of conversation is a lot more engaging for everyone than just a one-sided kind of question and answer, you know, call and respond conversation, which I think no one really enjoys. All right, and moving on, interview follow-up. I didn't know this for a very long time, but having worked in recruiting, always follow up your interview with a thank you email. People took time out of their day to meet with you, and you should thank them at the very least for that. If you're excited about the position, let them know. Get specific about what you took away from the interview and what excites you. And if you have further input or questions for them, ask them. You know, it's a ongoing conversation, hopefully. And now we're going to talk about also building up useful skills now, which I think, you know, we kind of touched upon earlier. Hand it over to Jenna.
Yeah, I mean, I think this came up earlier, but it's a good time to, you know, kind of pause and think about, you know, what are skills that that maybe you have gaps, or a software you've always wanted to learn. You know, Revit's a good one. If you don't know it, most firms would like you to. I'll leave it at that. Also, just, you know, stay connected, you know, be talking to people. It's a good opportunity to think about, you know, what would be ideal for your next job. I mean, you may not be in a position to you know, to be super picky, but it doesn't mean that you can't, you know, be focused about the firms that you are really interested in, and you know, and spending the time to be, you know, kind of thoughtful about where you want to work and what you want to do. You know, it's a great time if you have a mentor to pick their brain, and if you don't, to find one. I think plenty of people would be recognize that this is a really challenging time and would be happy to have a conversation with you. You know, and maybe it's a less pressured conversation, right? You know, could I just, you know, talk to you about my resume, or, you know, could we just have coffee, and, you know, and you can, you know, and kind of chat about, you know, what you're seeing and what advice you would give, and that it's not always a, you know, an ask for a job, because that might not be something that people can do right now, but they'll remember. And I think, you know, people will be happy to help. And then if a job does come along, to remember that you took the time, you know, to put in the hard work. And then I think there's lots of things that you can do, whether it's, you know, the kind of research that we talked about earlier, you know, volunteering, you know, just kind of looking for opportunities to build skills, even if they're not, you know, even if it's not working in an architecture firm, but doing, you know, kind of other things that are going to keep you connected, keep your skills, you know, in good shape, maybe add new skills. And then if you're having, you know, the conversation with many people, you know, then I think ultimately some dots will get connected, and you'll end up, you know, getting some interviews.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of questions on the chat about, you know, starting or maybe taking this time to start something different, or starting part-time, or spending time to get more education on something specific. And I remember the story from Ashley. I've seen a message from Marina, people that, you know, took the opportunity of the previous crisis, for example, to move up or slightly change the position. And then, you know, or maybe even as employed people, they, you know, were stuck in a position because during the crisis, it's hard to leave your job, even if maybe you're not happy in that position at the moment. And then that really helped with their career move, even if it was a really tough moment or a really tough, you know, choice. So I've definitely seen a lot of stories of success coming from this.
Yeah, and you know, for those of you who know I'm giving, you know, Karen Liljegren, she started her office during the last recession. So, you know, anything is possible, you know, if you really put your mind to it, you know, through grit. I mean, now she's, you know, her firm is just growing every year. So I think good stories can come out of these recessions as well.
Definitely.
I would open it up for questions if you guys, we're running a little late, I know, but if you guys have questions.
Don't be shy.
Should people post questions that they don't think were completely answered? You're welcome to ask them in person.
Yeah.
There's been some great comments in the chat too, so we appreciate the attendees that added their own comments.
I guess I have a question for Lily, because you guys are kind of based all over globally. Do you see certain areas where there's more positive activity for jobs or others compared to others?
Yeah, so we have offices in London, New York, Sydney, Melbourne, and Los Angeles. We've been seeing, well, honestly, LA has been doing not nearly as poorly as London. London got hit pretty hard. And our Australian offices were shut down before Los Angeles and are opening up earlier. They're a few weeks ahead. So hiring is actually picking up there. I think our New York office is still, you know, they're working with clients and they're still getting people jobs, but things have definitely are slower and picking up much slower there. So I'd say Australia is kind of ahead of the game, and then LA, and then London and New York.
I saw a comment, Lonnie, I think it was you, about reaching out to firms that you've worked at before, which is a really good idea. And actually, recently when I was trying to find some temporary work, some temporary people, but struggling with the fact that we needed them to ramp up really quickly, and we're remote, and you know, I need you to kind of already know who we are, which is very difficult for somebody who's temp. I did reach out to some ex-employees who I knew might be available, you know, had their own. So, you know, if there's people who work for themselves, but it's like a little bit slow, you know, or you're just kind of interested in, or you've worked somewhere else, or you interned somewhere, it's not a bad idea at all to, you know, reach out to places where you're a known entity, and even if it's a temporary gig, it could turn into something more, or maybe that's all you want. You know, it's just a temporary assignment that also becomes a resume builder. So right now it's really hard because we're remote. Just, you know, the kind of onboarding. So the less things that you can, you know, the less challenges that can be taken away from that, the easier.
I think we have some raised hands, actually.
Yeah, and I see questions too from Caitlin and Davina. Do you guys want to?
Yeah, so I guess there's a question: should a portfolio look like for someone with 4 to 6 years of experience? Should you have schoolwork in there?
Yes.
I agree.
from my perspective, yes. You should have work experience in there as well, but you know, you don't need to have your full academic portfolio, but a few projects that you're really proud of that show how you approach the work is very helpful. I think it's very helpful because we all know that you know, professional projects are, you know, are teams. And it can be a lot harder to, you know, kind of really understand what somebody's role was or what they did on that. But if you're talking about, you know, a kind of design project that you were responsible for, then that helps us to put all of that together and see a more complete. So 4 to 6, I would definitely still have some academic work in there.
Yeah, I would just probably put it like separate. Make it clear where your professional experience, which projects were for professional projects and which ones were academic, and maybe put the academic ones behind the professional ones, just so that when people open the portfolio, they don't think that you just sent them your school portfolio, because that happens all the time. People, you know, they're just like, boom, they just send it over.
Yeah. All right. I guess we have some raised hands. Caitlin, did you want to share anything?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Hi. So I have a question in regards to sort of the workplace environments, and if you're seeing a trend now that we've all been thrown into working remotely from our homes, and for many people that's sort of been working. Do you think that's going to stay for a while, or do you think as soon as we can all get back into working in more collaborative environments? Just curious, because that might affect the locations we might look for jobs, even though we're in LA. If something pops up in San Francisco, but you're doing it remote, it might still be a viable option.
I think it's really hard to tell. I'm fairly sure that this is going to have a longer term impact on officing and how we do our work. But I don't think we we know yet. And I think we also don't really know the impacts of this global experiment of everybody working from home. And so, you know, personally, I know we're pretty focused on trying to figure out what do we need to do to try to be able to get back together, recognizing that that's going to be phased, and there may be, you know, kind of a different way of thinking about remote work than there was before all of this. You know, I think there's definitely a recognition, okay, we can do things that we didn't necessarily think we could do. In terms of the contract, I think it probably really depends. I mean, Lily and I just had this conversation, and I guess my feeling right now is, and I think this would be different for different firms, but if I was going to entertain two people, and one was in LA and one wasn't, and they were pretty comparable, I would probably pick the one in LA, because that would have a longer term probably opportunity of that person, you know, if they wanted to become an employee. And we don't have an office there, but we're not, you know, there's other, I mean, like, you know, Lonnie could weigh in about SOM or something. I mean, there's other firms that have multiple offices, and, you know, they may treat it very differently. So I don't think there's probably a single answer. And I wouldn't, I guess, shy away from, you know, putting in your resume if you see, you know, or your application if you see a job opening in another city.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Caitlin, maybe a good way is, let's say you're in LA and you see an opportunity in San Francisco, and maybe right now it is, but maybe like in your cover letter, you could write willing to move or something, maybe as an idea, to show that it's not, because probably if you really wanted to move to that city, you would do that anyway. I don't know.
I think just generally from a recruiter standpoint, if you're like wanting to do remote only for a job, whether it's contract or not, I mean, a lot of the times it kind of then makes it really hard for them to even consider you for permanent. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's tough, I know, but maybe if you are planning on moving to that area, but you just need a permanent job first, mm-hmm. you put that in your cover email, okay, that you're remote, you're looking to move to LA or SF or wherever, you're looking for a contract role now, hopefully it will turn into permanent, or you're looking for a job. Once you get a permanent role, you'll be able to move there. Making that super clear, I think, is going to be key, because if you just send it and you're somewhere else, then it just gives people an opportunity to disregard it, and you kind of want to get ahead of that.
I mean, I think what we might see, depending obviously what happens in the markets, is that, you know, LA's not one of these markets, but where smaller markets that don't have the connection to academia, right, and can have a more difficult time kind of hiring and retaining top talent. I'm not going to name any cities because I don't want to, you know, say that, but, you know, that is an issue in certain areas of the country. I could imagine that there could be opportunities where, you know, those markets and firms would be more open to remote work, but you would also have to consider that those are less expensive parts of the country, likely, and the salaries would follow that, right? So, but we may see just a more blurring of the lines across, you know, across the country.
Right.
Do we have other questions?
There's a couple more questions, I think, and then maybe we want to wrap it up, but I don't want to keep you guys too late. I see Rosalind has a raised hand, and Shuki as well. Yeah.
Rosalind?
Hi, thanks.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question. I think I'm maybe the only one from New York, but that's okay. Thank you for Thank you
Hi.
for
Welcome from New York.
WIA, because we're kind of connected through WIA, so this is fantastic, and I can share it. We have a committee meeting tomorrow night, so I'll share that how amazing this session was. So my question is just kind of what do you see? This is for, I guess, both. Like, what do you see in terms of sectors? What market sectors do you see as most active? And for example, I'm assuming not like hospitality or high-end luxury multifamily. However, if you have a lot of high-end multifamily experience, such as I do, I'd like to, learn what are the more, I guess, active sectors, and then kind of reposition or reframe my experience, because luxury residential is residential, so it's still transferable, a lot of the skills. So yeah, I'm just interested to hear what you're seeing as some of the more active sectors in, LA, New York City. These are all big cities, and I think it's a global market, so I'm just curious to hear what you have to say.
Or, Jenna, do you want me to jump in on this? Yeah. Okay.
You can start, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think New York and LA are pretty different in terms of what markets have been affected, because in Los Angeles, housing can still be built, and it was considered it's considered an essential service, and so construction on high-end private residential is still going on. Some homeowners have gotten skittish and they've pulled out, but many haven't. So that's still happening. Firms are, I don't know if they're hiring as much, but work is still going on, and that's those sectors. In terms of the sectors that I've seen that have been hit the hardest, it's obviously hospitality and commercial retail hospitality. It's just been hurt so bad. But housing in LA, because of that mandate that it's considered an essential service, all housing has gone forward, including multifamily residential housing.
I'd say education's doing pretty well. Data centers and all that high technology, it's going strong, because there's a lot of need for internet and data and all of that. Aviation, airports, those guys have been hit pretty bad as well. So maybe other forms of transportation, but yeah, that was a very sensitive industry too, that went down.
That's interesting. So data centers are doing well?
Data centers going very strong. There's a lot of clients in need for the cloud. And right. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And Shiara works at Corgan, so they do that. They do data
but
centers.
Aviation's doing really bad. And
they do aviation.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like transferring those skills over to a company that's, or to another sector, I'd say housing would be, really great, but also if you would consider interior kind of architecture, interiors, that can be transferable into like workplace, commercial, even, different kinds of commercial workplace, or just commercial interiors in general. I don't know, Jenna, do you have any other thoughts? I'm kind of blanking right now.
Yeah, I think the markets were all, it's going to remain to be seen how this plays out, right? And like Chiara said, the markets that K through 12, healthcare, higher ed, those tend to be funded projects that proceed. That the funding is in place and they will move forward. And you can look back at the prior recession and sort of see that, but sometimes there's a drag on those, where, in a year from now or more, less of that work coming out. So I think, maybe what's really strong today may or may not, they tend to have less of a peak and valley than hospitality or commercial, or and so I guess I wouldn't assume that just, what's strong today is going to be strong tomorrow, or that what's weak today is going to be weak tomorrow. But in terms of, kind of pivoting, I agree with, I think, some of the things about high-end residential is probably an attention to detail, really great detailing, probably challenging clients. So I think there's things that you could, doing everything, the whole range. So I wouldn't shy away from, kind of looking for, maybe more focused in interiors to start. But I think it could be in any number. It could even be in healthcare. I mean, it's not all applicable, but I think there's always a place for, somebody who has really strong detailing capabilities.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I don't know, in LA market, adaptive reuse is like a hard to find candidates who have adaptive reuse experience, but I think in New York, everything is adaptive reuse.
Yeah.
But if there's any design build companies, that could also be worth reaching out to them.
It is 5:34. I'd love to call on Shuchi as maybe our last question.
Yeah, hi. So first of all, that was a really great presentation. It was super helpful, from how to have a resume to portfolio. And I say that because I just recently graduated from USC with a master's. So I feel it was even more important being just getting into this and understanding how it goes. So my questions are purely from a recent graduate point of view and also being an international student. So the first question I have is that I've been actively looking for an opportunity for the past 3-4 months. And basically we started searching 3-4 months prior to graduation. And I've been looking at all these platforms and I've seen this need. And like you mentioned in your presentation, that there was this need for specific roles for executives or BIM managers. And the other postings I saw were for people that had, say, 7 to 10 years of experience, but nothing really for just recent graduates or people with less experience. So do you see that changing in the next few weeks, or do you have any comments about that? Or what advice would you give to people who've just graduated and have minimal experience? And then secondly is a lot of international students actually have some experience between their undergrad and masters, say it might be less from 2 to 3 years. So what kind of importance is that given over here? As from the hiring standpoint, do you give it equal weightage, or how do you perceive international experience, full-time international experience?
You want me to take that, or you want to
oh
go
yeah,
later?
sure. You want to
Yeah, well, congratulations on graduating. I think that the market for entry level will probably change, because I mean, there may be a lot of people looking for, for certain positions, but it's always necessary, right? People coming out of school always have kind of the latest and greatest computer skills, and and there's I think it will continue to be a need for that, and it's also not a highly compensated, in terms of the range, and therefore I think maybe firms that are might be less reluctant to bring on some junior staff because it just doesn't have the same financial commitment. So I think, I wouldn't be discouraged. I think the idea of, positing that you would be fine with a summer internship, right, could be a really good way to get in the door. And if you've interned here, in your schooling, that could be a good place to start. Leverage your, your professors and people maybe that graduated a year ago and are in firms. Get your resume in their hands. in terms of international experience, I think it counts for something. You know, it kind of depends what it is, but that would be with any experience. I think, you know, you're kind of always looking at what's the years of experience, what is that experience in, how applicable is it to what we do, and you know, and so I think that there's that I wouldn't say that doesn't count for anything. And I think if you let the hiring person decide what that counts for, if you have professional experience that's international, then you count that as years of experience. So if you worked for 3 years, you have 3 years of experience in whatever, you know, other international market. That's fair. That's fair to say that.
Yeah, and just building off of that, you know, I know it can be hard probably to get that first break kind of into like a job, you know, after school. So I mean, when at Bespoke we have candidates who have like 0 years of experience in the US, what we typically, I mean, it does, especially when you're going into like education sector or healthcare or really any sector, because they all deal with agencies that are specific to California and the US. So they are looking a lot of the times for that experience with somebody who has like 2 to 3 years of experience. They want to know if they've worked with like agencies like OSHPA, DSA, City of Los Angeles, you know, depending on the sector that you're looking to get into. But I think a lot of times when we have like really great candidates that apply, but they don't have the experience that, you know, we kind of, our clients expect to come from us, what we tell them is to apply to all the firms that you are interested in, even if they do not have postings up right now, and make a really deliberate application. Don't just like litter your application everywhere, but, you know, make a really deliberate cover email or cover letter. Like Jenna was saying, like so eloquently, tell a narrative in your portfolio and resume, and just, you know, tell them like why you're applying there. I do think sending the resume and portfolio straight to them, if you can get a contact, is going to make a difference, versus applying through ArtConnect. Although I don't know, maybe ArtConnect's going to like sue me for saying that, but that's just been my experience with them. And you know, and just brush up on your interviewing skills. You know, it's tough, I think, to get that first break, but like Jenna said, looking at it from like a market standpoint, from an employer standpoint, it is easier to bring somebody on with a lower salary requirement, and it's not something everybody wants to hear, but it's true. It's actually an advantage. Sounds weird, but it's an advantage to have a lower salary requirement right now. So, and a lot of times.
I would say, Shuchi, leverage, Jenna said this already, but I would emphasize like leverage your professors, because, you know, they know a lot of other architects, and I think their recommendations will go a long way. So really, you know, find the ones that are your champions, because they're there for you, right? They're there for you through school, so they're gonna try to help you find a job. So encourage, you know, reach out to the ones who you think can kind of help send it off, you know, because it may not lead to something in 2 weeks. Who knows? Maybe in 2 months.
Yeah, and if they can provide
and just being here,
yeah.
You know, I mean, attending these are like all the things to be doing, to just hear, you know, get connected, hear what's going on. You know, there's always a chance that somebody on something like this says, "Oh, we're hiring."
Yeah.
You know,
I have to say a lot of firms are maybe on a hiring freeze like right now, but they also understand that there is a lot of talent that's available that wasn't available 3 months ago because the market was extremely busy. And I think people are always looking for good candidates because this is not going to be forever. So
can I just quickly add one thing as an international architect. Sushi, I'm happy to see you in the panel here. And I'm happy for your question too. I think as an international architect, right, I had a partner from a firm in New York that in their interview, I had the interview with him, and he asked me one thing that was very, for me at that moment, made it very clear. I was already in the US for maybe 5 years working in the US, and I had almost 5 years of experience in Brazil. And what he said is that it's very hard for them to measure what is our experience back in our countries. And he was very honest. He said that because in the US you have different building codes, potentially zoning codes that you might be dealing with, they can't really translate that from one country to the other. So I would recommend, as an international or architect designer, right, that you try to frame your experience back in your country as what did you learn from that, and try to phrase that in a way in your resume or during your interview that makes clear that it's more about a kind of experience that you gained from that, right? So that's the way that they will translate that experience that you had back in your country or international or even in other countries.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're gonna call it a day. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope this was helpful, and we can probably share the presentation, right, with everyone, so you can all go back and look at it. Thank you again, Jenna and Lily, for your time and for being with us. And yeah, hopefully, I don't know, we'll see you at in-person events soon. And good luck with everything.
Guys,
Thanks for having us.
I'm a chair for AWA plus D, and we have another meeting right now for a small business series. If anybody wants to go there, I'm a advocacy chair, so you guys are welcome to join us.
You're a trooper.
Yeah. Thanks, Luciana.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.